thanks for the invitation and for the opportunity to present this important and challenging topic of the pediatric patients' involvement fostered by EPTRI, the European Pediatric Translational Research Infrastructure. My name is Donato Bonifazi, and I am the Chief Executive Officer at Consorzio per Valutazioni Biologiche and Farmacologiche and coordinator of EPTRI, the European Pediatric Translational Research Infrastructure. I'm also president of ICRO, the Italian Association of Clinical Research Organizations, and member of several working groups at EMPREMA, the European Network of Pediatric Research at the European Medicines Agency, and at EUCROF, the European CRO Federation. The ID-EPTRI project was funded by the Horizon 2020 and coordinated by Consorzio per Valutazioni Biologiche and Farmacologiche with the aim to design the framework of a new research infrastructure able to accelerate the pediatric drug development process with 29 partners from 21 EU and not EU countries participating in the project. During the first phase of the project, a context analysis survey showed that more than 330 research units from 29 countries were interested to provide services in the framework of EPTRI for fostering pediatric research. EPTRI is aimed to increase knowledge on human development and ontogeny, as well as their impact on drug effects and toxicity, and to implement and provide services on pediatric preclinical and translational research and new technologies adapted to the pediatric setting. It will allow to cover some critical gaps in the pediatric research, such as lack of integration and lack of funding, by providing structural support to researchers, access to specific pediatric research services, and building research platforms to enhance collaborative work and increase knowledge on many scientific topics related to basic preclinical and translational pediatric research. EPTRI users will have access through the single access point to 3 types of services: integrated services provided by the research unit organized in the 4 thematic research platforms, centralized services managed and provided at central management office level, provided by the office and experts from EPTRI partner institutions, common services provided in collaboration with other research infrastructures. Additionally, other platforms are foreseen in the future regarding medical devices, placental research, and advanced therapy, due to the concrete interest demonstrated during the EPTRI surveys. The key to the EPTRI development is the engagement with the young patients and young people, patients and patient organizations in order to promote pediatric basic research using a patient-centric approach. This will facilitate a feasible translational research development of the programs of EPTRI and ensure translational research focus on community and patient-relevant priorities. The young patient's voice has been considered in the research infrastructure development from the real beginning. Several activities have been designed and performed during the EPTRI project with the aim to encourage patients' participation in the pediatric basic research. First of all, a survey was created and completed by EPTRI beneficiaries to scrutinize the expertise of the European institutions in activities of patient and public involvement, PPI, and to collect resources related to basic and translational research in the development of medicines for children to be included in the interactive tool. A focus group was then developed on March 27, 2019, during the 3rd EPTRI General Assembly meeting in Madrid, where a workshop on patient and public involvement in research was organized to analyze the obstacles and the benefits of involvement of patients in the field of basic research. Some of the outcomes of this discussion were further used to develop the Patient's Toolkit on Pediatric Translational Research. That is an interactive video aimed to educate children, young patients, and families on basic preclinical and translational pediatric research. Moreover, a roundtable with young people has been organized to bring the voice of the young people with real examples of their involvement in activities and to discuss how to better include the preferences and the needs of the patients. The survey was administered to EPTRI beneficiaries and third parties, and 23 members from 15 different institutions completed it. Most institutions were research organizations and health service providers, nearly 40% each, while other participants were national research infrastructures or civil society organizations. The participants indicated as potential options to engage patients in the future: the promotion of activities aimed to patient and public involvement, 15%, and participation in advisory boards, 14%. And this is the figure on the left. Regarding obstacles to be faced, most participants underlined the availability of economic resources, 26%, lack of guidance to facilitate an ethical process to involve patients and families, 25%, and the lack of a framework to promote and standardize the involvement of patients, 25%. And this is the figure on the right. The members of the EPTRI consortium provided in the survey also a list of resources related to basic preclinical and translational research in the development of medicines for children to be included in the interactive tool. The focus group was organized during the workshop on patient and public involvement in research that was held at the third EPTRI General Assembly meeting. In several small groups, all the attendees analyzed the obstacles and the benefits of 9 areas of involvement of patients in the field of basic research, the same areas that were addressed in the survey. They were promoting patient and public involvement, definition of patient-relevant added value and outcomes, participation in the assessment of potential new projects, donation of economic resources to perform research, revision and validation of documents, designing awareness campaigns, participation in the investigation research board, participation in the advisory boards, and finally, contributing to the creation of lay summaries to communicate research outcomes. Some of the most significant obstacles are listed in the slide, such as lack of a professional to liaise with patients and families, unavailability of economic resources, lack of an EU-defined commitment, scarce educational resources, lack of guidance to facilitate an ethical process, lack of a framework of regulation dedicated to promoting and standardize the involvement of patients. The activity with the focus group resulted in an analysis report that included tips and suggestions to incorporate the voice of the patients in basic research, where each obstacle was addressed with several solutions. The Patient's Toolkit is an interactive tool related to the contents of EPTRI's thematic research platforms. The main objectives of this toolkit are to educate patients and families about pediatric research with a special focus in the 4 thematic research platforms included in the EPTRI infrastructure, to inform the general population about basic research and pediatric medicines development, to create a general and interactive collection of reliable resources, to design a general video to explain in lay language the basic research process, and finally to offer a guidance to incorporate the voice of patients in basic research. Before designing the toolkit, an interview with 2 researchers, one in the field of pediatric basic research in oncology and the other with an expertise in pediatric neuromuscular diseases, has been performed. The idea was to receive feedback from the researchers in order to identify a case that could illustrate how a pediatric medicine is developed, starting from basic research studies and going through all the steps that lead to successfully accomplish this process. Finally, the case of a new potential therapy for pediatric retinoblastoma that uses a genetically modified virus was selected, as it met all the requirements to build an illustrative storyline on pediatric drug development. The video is in English and subtitled in more than 10 European languages and contains the resources that were collected from the survey. The resources included in the toolkit are clustered in 7 groups: basic research, translational research, donation of patients' samples, animal testing, patient and public involvement, EPI, fundraising, and ethics. In this slide, you can see an example of the focus dedicated to the basic research page, where a short explanatory clip is available together with selected resources. The most innovative part is that young person advisory groups, established groups of young people, patients, and healthy volunteers from 12 to 18 years old, linked to academic institutions and children's hospitals, have been involved in activities of EPTRI. They have been trained specifically in the field of basic and translational research, with the aim to be consulted in the design and delivery of research initiatives. But let's focus now on the EPTRI Patients Toolkit on Pediatric Translational Research. In order to guarantee a patient-centered approach, the Young Persons Advisory Groups have been involved in the design and creation of the toolkit itself. The resources included were reviewed by the YPAGs in Barcelona, Bari, and Tirana prior to the attachment to the toolkit. They were boys and girls, both patients and not, aged from 12 to 18. The design of the toolkit also took into consideration the information gathered by members of the same Young Persons Advisory Groups, YPAGs, who also reviewed the script of the video in order to make the language and the layout more child-friendly. In particular, they proposed to simplify the language, adding a clear explanation of some topics and making the terms less specific for very young people. They also contributed to disseminate it through their friends using social media channels. Trained YPAGs members will be also involved with the aim to facilitate the development of patient-centric services projects. Moreover, dedicated actions such as organization of roundtables and forum discussions will be foreseen to involve patient organizations, patient representatives, and families. And several materials for patients and patients advocates focused on empowerment, education, and information in the field of basic, preclinical, and translational research will be developed. Now you can watch the toolkit. Enjoy it.
In the field of pediatrics, like in every other scientific area, researchers and healthcare professionals work based on scientific evidence, which is information or data obtained from scientific experiments and verified by the scientific community. But doing research in this field must take into consideration children's peculiarities. Children are very different from adults, mainly because their bodies are developing and constantly changing, and this will have an impact in all the experiments and trials performed by scientists. In pediatrics, basic research sows the seeds to grow new solutions for future medical use. But how does basic research build the foundations for these discoveries? Let's follow a case together. A treatment for the most common eye cancer in children, retinoblastoma, which involves the use of a genetically modified virus. First, different research groups from several countries joined together to communicate other researchers a promising finding: the use of certain viruses as a therapy against cancer. Several studies have been showing in a conclusive way the possibility of modifying some types of virus to get rid of carcinogenic cells. A translational research group wants to test this option, and to do that, it has to contact another research group who has the expertise to modify the virus. A biotechnology group takes the first step to carry out studies based on the knowledge of basic research groups. In this case, they have modified a virus which might now only attack cancer cells. The next step is to test it on biological models. With the help of the patients and their families, who donate samples of body tissues, researchers reproduce the encounter of the modified virus with the tumor at a microscopic level. It lays the foundations for the next step: testing in small animals. The accomplishments of the different research groups and the publication of their results make it possible to successfully try the potential therapy on children suffering from this type of eye cancer. A clinical trial can now be conducted. If the outcomes of the clinical trial are positive, patients gain access to a less invasive potential cure and with fewer side effects than previously available options. Nowadays, and thanks to the collaboration of researchers, clinicians, patients, and families, basic research in retinoblastoma has allowed the design of the first clinical trial to potentially treat this disease. To continue having a positive impact on children's lives, we need to involve them and their families in the whole research process. Together we can encourage patient-centric research in pediatrics. Help us help others.